Hello to all, welcome to the channel Cloud Knowledge. Today in this video we'll study a scenario where in the storage account we have multiple JSON files and our requirement is to copy those JSON files to a destination folder only if they have data. If the JSON is empty, if it does not have data, we will not copy that file. Okay, so the requirement holds here for the complete list of JSON files which are present in the container inside the folder. Okay, so here you can see that we have the test input container, and inside that container we have JSON input folder, and inside that folder we have 6 JSON files. Okay, if we let's say go back here to the storage into account to the containers, let's see the complete path. We have to go inside the test input container and to the JSON input folder. Okay, and here lies all the JSON files which are needed to be processed. Okay, so let's see the contents of these files. So the first file is 1.json. If we go and try to preview the data, it has one element in it. If we go to the next JSON, cosmos.json, it has 2. Third one is empty json.json. This is kept to see that the empty JSON should not be copied to the destination. So this does not have any element in it. Then comes empty JSON file, another empty JSON. This too does not hold any data. Then item 3.json. It has one element in it. Then comes JSON, new json.json. It also has some data. Okay, so our requirement is clear that from this folder JSON input inside the test input container, we have to traverse through every file and copy only those JSON files which have data. The empty files need not to be copied. So here among all these 6 files, we have these 2, empty JSON and empty JSON file.json, which we will not copy. Okay, so how we will accomplish this in Data Factory, we are going to demonstrate in this video. So let's go to the Data Factory, to the author tab, and start creating the pipeline. So let's click on plus sign to create a new pipeline. Name we have to give. So let's name it as copy JSON with data. So we have to copy the JSON files which have data. Okay, so let's close this. So now we have to begin the pipeline. So which activity should be taken first? So if we go back here, we have this container, right? Test input container, and inside this folder we have many files. And to access these files, we could use the get metadata activity and give the location of the dataset only up to this container and this folder, because we have to process each and every file which is present inside this folder JSON input. Okay, so we have to first use the get metadata activity so that from this folder JSON input we traverse through all the child items. Child items means the files which are present at this folder location. So let's go here and take the get metadata activity which is present under the general tab. So let's take the get metadata activity in the canvas, and here in the get metadata activity we'll leave the general tab as is. We'll go to the settings tab, and here we'll try to connect to the dataset. So we'll create a new dataset plus new. So our files lies inside the data lake storage into. We'll select that. We'll continue. The files are JSON, so we'll select the file format JSON and continue. Let this be JSON 4. Then link service we have to select. So for that storage account we have the link service already in place. Then the file path we have to browse to that location. So it's inside the test input folder, as we have already seen, inside the JSON input folder. Okay, so we'll select JSON input. We don't have to select any of the files because we have to select only till the folder so that we can traverse to every file. So we'll not select any file and click OK. Import schema none and then click OK. So this is done. Next is we will try to open this JSON 4 dataset, and we'll see that yeah, the file path is correct. it has gone up to the folder level, that is container, folder, and then we can give the file names. So here the file name is empty. That is what we wanted, and these file names will be taken one by one from this folder to process. It will traverse through each of these files using the loop concept and the variable concept. Okay, so here we'll go back to the pipeline. So we have selected the JSON dataset. So next is the field list. We'll click on plus new. The argument we have to pass as child items. Child items denotes that at that particular location, whatever files are stored, give me those files. Okay. So we have selected from the field list argument as child items, and now we can validate this get metadata activity and perform a debug run to see if the get metadata activity is fetching us all the child items. So the get metadata activity status is queued. Let's click on refresh. It shows succeeded. Now we'll check the output of the get metadata activity. So it has fetched us in the form of JSON child items. So the child items includes name and type. First file 1.json, empty JSON file, item 3.json, new JSON, and Cosmos JSON. So all the 6 files which are present at the test input folder, it has fetched for us. Now with the help of get metadata activity, we have got the JSONs. Okay. Our next job is to traverse through every file and check the content of the file. So in order to traverse through every file, we have to use the looping concept. And the loop here in Azure Data Factory, the activity used for looping is for each. Okay. So if we go inside the iteration and conditionals section, we'll get for each. Okay. So we'll take for each in the canvas. Okay. So for each of these child items, we have to perform some actions. That is, we have to check the contents of the file and then copy. So we'll connect the get metadata activity output to the for each activity. Okay. And then we'll click on for each. So for each has some settings. We'll leave the general tab as is. We'll go to the settings tab. We'll click on sequential here in the for each settings because we want to traverse through all the files in sequential manner. Okay. Next is the items. This property should be parameterized. We'll click on items and try to add the dynamic content. So here in the for each, how should be the items? The items are coming from the get metadata activity and they are the child items, right? So here under the activity outputs, we have the get metadata activity 1 outputs. So list of subfolders and files in the given folder. That is the child items. Okay. If we have other conditions to check, we will use the other activity outputs. But in our case, we have to traverse through all the child items which we have got. Okay. So we'll click on this child items and it will give us @activity. The activity name is get metadata 1 dot output dot child items. Means from the get metadata activity, take all the child items. We'll click on OK. So the settings in the for each is done. That is, whatever the child items are coming from the get metadata activity, we have to process the child items one by one in sequential order. Now we'll go to the third tab of for each, that is the activities tab. So for each of these child items, what we have to perform? The case activity. So here we have this edit button. We'll click on the edit. So what happens is that once we click on that button, we reach inside this for each. Okay. So we are inside the for each block now. If we go back here, the original pipeline is this. And if we click on for each and inside this for each block, we are inside this for each. And for each of these child items, we want to check the contents of the file one by one and then copy. Okay. So to check the contents of the file and copy, we have to first set the variable. So in order to traverse through all the files and check the contents, we have to use the concept of variable because the file is changing. Okay. Once the pipeline is in process state, what we have to do is we have to perform the task or the activities under the for each block for each of these files. And these files during the pipeline execution will change one by one. So in order to implement that concept, we have to use variables. Okay, so we'll go back here and we'll go to the pipeline, original pipeline, and we'll go to the canvas which is empty without selecting any of the activities. And here, once you click on the empty space, you'll get 4 options. The output is the pipeline execution output, parameters, variables. Okay, so in the variable section, we'll click on plus new, and here we'll name the variable which is the file name. Okay, we'll give it simple file because we have these files as variables present inside the folder and we have to traverse through these. So we have given the file name here. We'll leave the type and default value as is. Now we'll go back to the for each block. Okay, and inside the for each block we'll go, and here we'll use the set variable activity. The set variable activity will help to set the variable, that is the file name, one by one and perform the activities which are given in the for each block. So we'll use the set variable activity which lies under the general section as the name set variable. So we'll take it in the canvas, and then the general tab will be as is, and in the settings tab we'll go and we'll select the variable type as pipeline variable. So the variable type is which type of variable you wish to set. Pipeline variables are user defined. Pipeline return variable is a system variable that you can set here, then use in the parent consuming pipeline. So our variable is the variable which we have defined at the pipeline level. Okay, so it is user defined variable, and we'll select the name. So that variable which is defined at the pipeline level will populate here when we select pipeline variable, and we'll select the file which we have defined. Now the value. So now in the value of the variable, we'll click on add dynamic content, and the value will be for each current item. That is for each of the item which is coming from the for each block, which in turn is coming from the get metadata activity. We have to take that item, and it will be item dot name. Okay, so the current item will be denoted in the set variable block. It will be the for each current item, that is the item and its name. For each current item dot name, the name of that item. We'll click OK. This is done. We have set the variable for the file name. Okay. After setting the variable using the set variable activity, we have to now look for the contents of those JSON files. So in order to look for the contents of the file in Azure Data Factory, we have lookup activity. So it is also present under the general tab with the name as lookup. So we'll take that in the canvas, and we'll connect the set variable activity to the lookup activity, and we'll click on the lookup activity. In the general tab, we'll leave the settings as is, and we'll go to the settings tab, and we'll try to connect to the source dataset. The source dataset is already created in the first step as JSON4. Okay, so the same JSON4 we will select here. We'll open the JSON4 here, and we know that in the JSON4 we have the file path as the folder name, and before that folder name we have the container name. File name we have not selected. So here in the source dataset, we will select the same source dataset JSON4. We will uncheck the first row only because we want all the rows coming from the source, and in the file path type we will select wildcard path. Okay, not the file path in the dataset, because in the dataset we have only included till the folder and we want the file path now. So we will click on wildcard file path. Okay, so it has folder path which we have already defined in the source dataset till the folder, that is JSON input, and now we have to give the file path. So the file path we will give after removing this, the default value which is coming for the wildcard file path name. We'll add the dynamic content. So we'll click dynamic content, and here in the dynamic content we will go to the variable section. So if you go towards the right, you have this variables tab here, and here from the variables you'll select the file. Okay, at the rate variables file. So whatever variable is giving us the file name, we will take that file. Okay, so we will select the variables and the file which is coming from the variables which are defined at the pipeline level and set by the set variable activity. So one by one each file will come. Okay, so we have defined the source dataset. We have taken the file path type as wildcard. file path, and this settings is done. Okay. So now the lookup activity setting is done. Now we will try to validate our pipeline up to this level and perform a debug run to see if everything is working fine up to this level. So the pipeline is getting executed. Let's wait for it to finish. So we can see that the blocks are in queued or progress state. Let's wait for it to finish. So here, if we go to the get metadata output, we are getting all the child items. Then we have the for each block, that is for each of the files, it will perform the set variable and the lookup activity. Pipeline activities have succeeded. In the get metadata activity, we are getting the child items. Then for each activity is there, and in for each we have defined sequential, so it will go one by one. It will set the variable. So the variable set at first will be 1.json, and the lookup 1 will help to give the contents of the file, that is 1.json. Whatever was the content, it has given us. The count was 1 and the value was 1xyz. Now again it will set the variable to empty.json, the next file, and again lookup. So empty JSON was having value as none. It was having an empty JSON file. Then again the third one will be empty JSON file.json. Then again the lookup will give you the contents of the file. Next is item3.json, which will again give you the contents of the file. Similarly, it has performed. Then next comes new.json and new.json's content. Next, the sixth one is cosmos.json and the cosmos.json's content. So up to this level, that is in the for each block, we have defined the set variable and the lookup. So it is performing for all the 6 files which are coming from the source. Okay. So it is taking up the data and giving us the result. Okay, the contents of the file. So we have accomplished the task up to this level, where we are setting the file name one by one and looking up the data. Now our requirement comes, that is we have to check the contents of these files, whether it is empty or not. So our next job is to apply the logic of checking whether the files are empty or not. If they are empty, we will not copy them to the destination folder. If they have the contents, we'll copy. So in order to implement that conditional check, we have to use the condition activity. And in ADF, we have it as if condition. So if we go to the iteration and conditionals, here we have the if condition activity. So we'll take this if condition activity in the canvas and we'll connect the lookup activity to the if condition activity. Okay. Now lookup is connected to the if condition and we'll click on the if condition now. In the if condition, again we have the general tab, we'll leave it as is and we'll go to the activities tab. So the first thing in the if condition is to give the expression, the evaluation expression on the basis of which it will go into the true and the false block. So here we will open the dynamic content and here we have to give the condition. So if you go to the second tab, that is the activity outputs, you'll get the activity outputs of all the previous activities which are defined. Get metadata activity is there, lookup is there. Okay. And we have to perform the empty check. So in order to perform the empty file check, if we go to the functions, we have under the collection functions empty. Okay. It returns true if object, array or string is empty. Okay. So what this collection function says, empty function, returns true if object, array or string is empty. For example, the following expression returns true, empty, and we have to write within brackets the condition. So on what activity output we have to apply this empty function? It is the activity output coming from the lookup activity. Okay, if we go here to the pipeline level, we have executed this pipeline up to this level, so that in the output we will see the lookup activity. Every lookup activity output, if you see, let's say this one. Okay, what is this file? First we see the file name is cosmos.json, and the contents of the file, it is shown through the lookup activity. So if we open the contents of the lookup activity, it shows count and value, okay, as the output, and inside the value we have the array, the first block, okay, id1, the second block, that is, there were two elements inside this JSON, so it is showing one by one. So it could be treated as an array. So here it could be said that the output is in the form of JSON, and it has this array, that is, in the square brackets we have the contents. So, and if we go to the for each block inside the if activity, inside the dynamic content, and to the collection function empty, it also says that it returns true if object, array or string is empty. So we will select the empty collection function, and inside this empty collection function will give the activity output, and the activity output will be given as the lookup activity output. So we'll select the lookup activity output, and as we have already seen in the JSON, if we go back, let's say click OK here, and we'll go back to the pipeline execution which we have performed, the debug run, and the output. You can see in the JSON we are getting two outputs, that is the count it is giving and the value. Inside the value it is giving us the contents of the JSON, right? So this was the first one. Let's go for any empty one. So this is empty JSON file. So we'll close this and we'll see the contents of the lookup. So it is having count 1. So through count 1 or the count output from the lookup activity, we could not deduce whether the file is empty or it is having value. Only from the value output of the lookup activity we can see that the array is not having any data inside it. So we could check from the value the occurrence of the first element. Okay, so the value is holding an array, and inside that array we have the JSON. So if the lookup activity value array index 0 is having no value, if it is empty, that means the file is empty. So we'll go back in the if condition block, and so if we go back to the if condition inside the expression, we'll take the lookup activity output dot, there are two options, count and value. As I've already told you, count will not help us in understanding whether the file is empty or not, so we'll take value, and from this value we'll take the array index 0. So what happens is that if the array index 0 is empty, it will consider it as an empty file. It will go into the true case. Okay, so we have defined using the empty collection function lookup activity output value 0. Okay, so this is done. We'll click on OK. And since the expression is defined that evaluate it to true when this lookup activity output value is 0. When it is 0, we do not want to perform any activity, right? We do not want to copy the file to the destination. So in the true case, we don't want to perform any activity. So we'll leave it to no activities. And when it is false, that means if it is not empty, then we want to perform a copy activity, right? So we'll click on false and click on the edit button. So click on the false edit button. So now we are under the if condition block under the false activities, and here we want to perform copy activity. So we'll take copy in the canvas and we'll go to the source tab. In the general, we'll leave it as is. We'll go to the source tab, and in the source tab, we'll select the same JSON 4. Okay, so from the drop down, select the JSON 4 dataset, and again we'll give the wildcard file path as the file path type. So we'll select the wildcard file path, and here in the wildcard file name, we'll again give the dynamic content. The dynamic content will be the variables file. Okay, so from the variables section, select the file, click OK. So this is done, and now we'll go to the sync, and in the sync we will create the new data set. So select the storage Gen2 storage account and we'll select the output file as JSON. Click continue. Let it be JSON5. Link service we already have for the storage account. We'll go to the output location. This time we'll try to land the file into the destination folder, which is test output. So select the test output folder and JSON output folder and click OK. Import schema none and we'll click OK. So this location I'll try to show you in the storage account. So if we go back here to the Cloud Knowledge Gen2 storage account, inside the containers we'll go, and inside the containers we have test output container. Inside this container we have the JSON output folder, and here we want to land the files. Okay, so we have given the settings for the copy, source as well as sync. Okay, now we'll try to validate the entire pipeline. So the pipeline has been validated. We'll go to the source level and we'll perform a debug run. Let's click on the debug and wait for the pipeline to get executed. All the 6 files are getting processed. Let's wait for it to complete. So now we can see that all the activities execution has successfully completed. Now we can go to the output folder and see if the output files, that is the JSONs which have the data, are produced here or not. So let's click on refresh at the test output folder and we can see the 4 files have landed here. 1 Cosmos, item 3 and new JSON. And we know at the beginning of the video we have checked that empty.json.json and empty.jsonfile.json had no data. They were empty, so they are not copied here. So what happened at the pipeline level, if we go to the empty JSON file and the empty file and check in the set variable activity for these files. So this was not the one, this was the Cosmos. Let's go before item 3. Here comes empty.json.json. Okay, so this is the file empty.json and just above it we have the lookup activity, okay, which is giving us the value of the empty.json. Again, the set variable has empty.jsonfile.json. The lookup will look up that the file has no content, let's say, is item3.json, which has data in it, right? The value has the contents of the JSON. Then it will copy this. And here if you see each and every copy data block, so we'll go to the input, we'll see that it is cosmos.json. Next is new JSON. So 1, 2, 3. 3 is item3.json. If we further go down, we have one more copy, that is for 1.json. No more copy data activities execution, because for the other 2 it was empty and it has not executed the copy data activity. So this is how we have implemented or demonstrated how we can copy only the files, the JSON files which have data, and ignore the files which are empty. I hope you have understood the logic. Thank you for watching the video. If any queries or doubts, let me know in comments.
Happy learning.
Thank you.